Hey guys, PB here from the Home Automation Project. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I make smart home automation videos with a specific focus on private, secure, and local access. I also cover a lot of open source tools in my videos. So if that interests you, I would recommend you check out my other videos in this channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about some of the advanced features in Frigate, which is an open source NVR, which integrates well with Home Assistant. If you are new to Frigate, I would recommend you watch my previous video on this topic where I show you how you can set up Frigate from scratch as well as integrate it with Home Assistant. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the specific advanced features of Frigate, which are face recognition, license plate recognition, as well as integration with generative AI such as Ollama, which enables you to generate object descriptions on the fly as well as to generate review summaries. These are pretty powerful features of Frigate, which are available for free. So I hope you will find a lot of benefit in this video. This video is going to be action packed with a lot of live demonstration of these features. So without further ado, let's get started. So I hope you can see my screen. I have opened the documentation for Gate and I just wanted to quickly touch upon the topics that I'm going to cover in this video. So among the advanced features that I'm talking about today, I'm going to cover semantic search, face recognition feature, the license plate recognition, and the generative AI. Before I go into the details of each of these features, let me quickly show you the configuration that I'm working with for this demo. I am assuming that you're familiar with the Frigate setup and also the Home Assistant integration of Frigate, and you're pretty comfortable with the config file of Frigate. If this is all new to you and this is the first time you're seeing Frigate, I would suggest you view my earlier video on how to set up Frigate and also how to integrate it with Home Assistant. I will leave you a link somewhere up on the screen to that video of mine. The few settings that are important for this video. One is MQTT because I'm going to show some automations in Home Assistant based on some of these features getting triggered. So you need to have MQTT built for that, and I have my MQTT servers for this demo is hosted on Home Assistant, so that's why I've pointed to the Home Assistant IP. If you have a separate server, you can use the IP of that server. The detector that I'm using is OpenWindow and iGPU pass-through. That's what I've done. So this Frigate instance of mine is sitting separately on a Proxmox. It's sitting outside a Home Assistant. The model that I'm using is the default OpenWindow model that comes with the Frigate. This is just for the demo purpose. It's quite a basic setup for anything you want to do with GenAI or AI related stuff. So this is going to be a bit slower than usual. In my production setup, I'm using Coral TPU. So there I have switched to YOLO version 9 model, and that's been pretty good. And it has been pretty snappy and very good in detecting. So I would recommend that setup. The other bit that I wanted to quickly talk about in the setup is the record. So I have the record enabled as true. This is one of the features, which is the review feature of GenAI. You need the recording to be done, but I have turned off continuous and motion detection records, and I have only switched on alerts and detections. So that means that only when an event happens on a tracked object, in this case, in this camera, it's going to be a person detection. That's when it's going to do the recording. Right, so that's just a basic setup I'm working with. Let's now talk about the features. So let's talk about this generative AI features. This is a very cool feature in Frigate, and it allows you to integrate your Frigate videos and images to be sent to either a local or a remote AI setup. So what you can, in my case, in this example, I have a Ollama instance setup on my MacBook, and that's the one which I'm using for this demo. So you can, ideally, you would be having some kind of local AI setup because you would be processing real-time video stream from your camera. So you may not want to send it to a public server, but depends on what your comfort level is and what kind of camera setup it is. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate it with the Ollama instance setup. But if you go to the configuration here, so you'll see that you can set up multiple types of AI servers. So for example, Gemini with API key and other options, as well as all the other OpenAI. All of them have been given as options here. And you can read the configuration. The setup I'm using is a simple where the provider is Ollama, and I'm running it on my MacBook. So 1434, and the model selection is also important. So remember that the model that you select for this needs to be vision capable model, because ultimately we are processing on video frames over snapshots. So that's important. I'm using this one, Qwen 3 VL4B. It's a quantized model. I find it to be pretty good, but it is definitely a bit on the slower side because it takes a while to process video frames as well as the snapshots. However, in my production setup, I think the speed is pretty good. But when using this GenAI feature, the review summaries or the object descriptions, they take a little bit of time. In fact, the object descriptions is still pretty okay, happens within a minute. But review summaries, they can take up to 2 or 3 minutes. So you'll have to define your use case for this, because you would, in a practical scenario, you would already receive a notification on, assuming you have the notification turned on, you would have already received a notification with the clip or the snapshot. So following it up with a GenAI summary or a description, not sure what the practical use case will be. Most likely it will be an offline use case, maybe a report or a triggering of some other automation based on that put. So that's something I'm sure you guys will figure out what use case you'll have. But this is a very cool feature, and I definitely want to demonstrate this because I find it to be very seamless and very nicely integrated feature as well. So the two features under the GenAI that Frigate offers, one is called review summary and one is object description. Let's talk about object description first because this is the easier one. So as part of this update, you get a new MQTT topic called track object update. And that topic basically contains the description. As I go along with this feature description of these features, you'll see that the same topic is also used for the face recognition or license plate recognition with a different type. So for the object description, the type is shown as description. For face recognition, for example, the type is shown as face and etc. So that's the topic that we are going to hook into for automations within Home Assistant. But other than that, there, if you go to your Frigate instance and there's this explore tab, and this is where once the GenAI has processed against those events or labels, you should be able to see the description right on the UI itself. And for the review summaries, assuming that you have reviews here, you should be able to see it under the. So once a review video is saved here, if you click on it, there will be two other menu items that opens up. One is called events and one is called detail. And under the events, you will be able to see that detailed description. Now, how do these look like? What's an example of these? So if you go here, let's talk about review summaries first. This is a more complex one, so to say. It has got this kind of structure. So you've got a title, a scene, short summary, confidence, other concerns, and potential threat level. If you see how this is structured, and there's a default system prompt defined. So this default activity context prompt. So this is like a system prompt, you can say, as you have in a normal AI prompting. And this has got a pretty detailed description. But this is something you can override. You can have your own definition of these, or you can define your own context prompt and just override the whole thing. So that's something you can do. And we'll talk about the config a little bit later. But if you see, this is more oriented towards probably threat detection, suspicious activity, etc. So it's more suitable for giving summary of all the reviews that have happened during the day and probably produce a summary to say, hey, it looks like some suspicious activity occurred during between this time. So that this is more like an offline reporting kind of tool rather than an instant notification kind of tool. That's what I feel the use case is for this. The other one, which is more useful, which is something which I would say you could use as a trigger for automation, is the description. So this is basically as soon as you get a tracked object, for example, you're tracking a person or a car, as soon as that happens, and once that life cycle of the tracking ends, so the detection starts and then the detection finishes, post that, it is going to generate a description based on the prompt. Again, everything is based on prompt because this is GenAI. So based on the prompt you have given, it will try and generate a description, and that description is published in the MQTT topic, and that is something which you can then hook onto from Home Assistant and generate a notification. I will demonstrate all of this in the demo that we're going through. So once we have gone through all the config, I'm going to show you an actual working example of this. So that's the main difference between review, summary, and description. There's another key difference. For review summary, it keeps on updating as events happen during that entire period of the recording. So if it initially detects a person object, it is going to provide a summary of that. But later in the frame, if it detects a star object as well, it is going to provide a summary of that as well. So it keeps updating the summary as and when it processes. And it is also native to the Frigate notification. So if you have switched on the Frigate notification, it is by default shown as part of the notification. And once the update happens in the backend, because the GenAI may take some time to process, so the update might take some time. but as an it updates the same notification with the details. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not sure of the practical use case of looking at it in the notification window, especially in a mobile phone. I've seen the real estate is pretty less, and these descriptions tend to be at least 3 or 4 lines, which cuts off some of the description towards the end. So bear that in mind when you're setting up any automation or any notification based on these. Right. So now let's look at the config. So for the review summary, the config is very simple. So let's just talk about this first. You literally need to only put this review GenAI enable true, and that's it. The image source recordings is overriding the default. Default is the preview or initial few snapshots from the recording, or you can give the entire recording. Again, the quality will be better if you provide the entire recording, but the speed will be less. So that's a balance that you would need to find. And for the object description, let's look at the configuration I have here. It might be easier. Right. So at the global level, first thing you need to add is a GenAI provider. This is common for both of the features, like the object descriptions. So here I provide a Ollama and a local IP and a model. And then you can optionally put extra options. I have put keep alive one -1, which basically loads the model forever until you manually unload it. And the context window size of 8192. This depends on the model you're using as well as the setting in the Ollama. Next thing is the GenAI prompt. So now there are 2 levels of prompt here. As you can see, the top level prompt applies on any tracked object, irrespective of the type of the tracked object. In case you don't have, if you have multiple. So for example, here I have given object level prompts as well. So when a tracked object is a person, this is the prompt to use. And when the tracked object is a car, this is the prompt to use. But maybe you're tracking a third object, I don't know, a cat or a dog. In that case, this generate prompt gets applied because you don't have a specific object level prompt. So it's a quite flexible in how you want to define. And this is the global level setting. And then you can override the whole thing at each camera level. So if I go down to my camera, which is the Tapo C200, what I've done here, I have again put the general level prompt. It's not necessary to repeat this, but I've just kept it for just to show you that you can actually override the global prompt as well if you don't want, because it's only one person tracking. So you mean it doesn't make sense to have a person. So only one object is being tracked here, which is a person. So the one single prompt would have done here. But just for demonstrating the option, I have put a person level prompt again. And here I have changed the prompt. So this is the prompt that will take effect versus the prompt that is at global level. Just to demonstrate this ability to override, I have made a change here and made it very simple. Obviously, you need to have the object track. If you have an object level prompt, you need to have that object as track. If you don't, let's say instead of person, I have just car here, then this prompt doesn't apply. And the global level prompt, either from here or from the top level, it's applied. And then rest of the options and objects is same. I've used snapshot true. So this basically, it improves the speed because it uses a snapshot instead of the video frames, but it decreases the accuracy of it. So if your setup has a dedicated GPU, for example, and if you have plenty of speed, you might not want to use this option and might submit the video frames directly for your review GenAI summary. Oh, the one other thing to note is this works on the detect frame. So if your detect frame is set up, if your detect stream is set up to point to a substream, you could improve the quality by setting the detect stream to the mainstream, for example. But obviously, again, the bandwidth will increase, the speed will decrease. So it depends on your specific setup and whether what is the lag you're comfortable with this whole setup. But yes, that's it. In true tradition of Frigate, it's just few flags in the config file. One important point to remember, for this GenAI to work, you need to have semantic search turned on. So if you go to your settings and the settings here and enrichments, this semantic search option, you need to enable this, and then you need to hit save and restart. So all this configuration is going to take effect only if you restart the Frigate instance. I'll talk about semantic search a little bit later. Let's go through the other bits of the GenAI and setup, and I will show you a demonstration of it as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is the automation. Before that, let me show you the MQTT topic that is currently set up. So if you see here, this is my MQTT Explorer. So at the moment, there's only these 2 cameras which are coming through from the setup. You can see the Frigate topic, but there is no topic at the moment which says tracked object update. That's the one which I talked about. That will appear when a detection happens. Since I've turned on the GenAI, but I haven't done a detection yet, that topic is not showing up here. The other thing is there will be other topics as well, which will come up. Event topic, which is a normal one when an event is detected, and a few others. But the main topic that we are after is a tracked object update. So now if we go to my Home Assistant instance. Let's look at an automation that I've set up for testing this GenAI description detection. I've set up a simple automation for the demonstrating this feature. So if you see it checks the topic, which is the Frigate tracked object update. Once it receives the topic, it executes an action, but there's an if condition I've applied here. Now, if you see the topic itself is agnostic of the camera, so there you might want to add some filter. For example, I have added a filter of the camera name as well as a filter of the type. As I mentioned earlier, the type is important because for the same type of same topic, you will get multiple detections. If, for example, both the face recognition and the GenAI option enabled, and if person is the tracked object, you'll get type as face as well as type as description. So you might want to run different formations based on the type, which I have as an example here. So we'll look at the face recognition as well when we come to that. So you can obviously add more filters, or you can even read text from within the description and probably add that as a filter, like if the text contains XYZ. So that's your flexibility you have. And an action, you could send a notification to your mobile. In this case, what I've done is I have just used browser mode pop-up. In case you're not aware of browser mode is a hacks utility, and it is pretty useful one because it allows you to target a UI or a screen to pop up any kind of content that you want to show. In this case, I have created this browser that I'm on as one of the targets. I've set this up as a target in browser mode. And here, the message that I've set up in the content is there's a fixed title of person detected. And in the content, I just passed through the entire description. This is just to demonstrate the ability when to connect the Frigate Gen AI object description to an automation. And you could take it from there. You can do much more complex automations based on this. I'm just making a simple demonstration here so that you can get the concept. So let's go and see a practical demonstration now. So if I go to my cameras, I'm going to use this camera. This is my Tapo C200 camera. At the moment, I have just kept the privacy mode on so that nothing gets triggered while I am talking. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the privacy mode. That should trigger a person detection because it's pointed towards me at the moment. And we'll see how the GenAI description and the review summary works. Now let's switch on the camera and see the process in action. So I'm going to switch off the privacy mode. That should trigger a person detection and should then in turn trigger the GenAI summaries and reviews. Let's see. So there I am. And as you can see, the person detection has happened. So it is detecting a person, which is me. Hello. And let's give it some content. Yep. So there you see the recording happened. So now I'm going to turn off the privacy mode. That should end the trigger. And unless the trigger ends, as I mentioned, your GenAI detections or GenAI descriptions and summaries don't get generated. So now I have turned it off and it should have gone away and called my Ollama instance and would be in the process of generating the description. So there you go. You see in the Home Assistant, the pop-up has come through as person detected and the person is wearing a black shirt. So basically my prompt was very simple. What is the person wearing in the camera? So that's what it has given. So the automation works perfectly fine. If you look at the Frigate topic, so if you see the topics have updated, and there you go, the track object update, that's the topic we are after. So that you can see is the type as description and the camera, and these are the 4 things and the description itself that you get in this topic. And the review topic has also fired. So that's the other bit. Let's go to Gate and let's go to reviews. And if I click here, and then you see these 2 tabs, events and detail. So if you go to events, this is where the description of the review will come through. So now you can see that the description has not yet been generated because my Llama is still getting fired. It takes a while, as I said, for this to happen. But the topic of review has already come through, and you can see the type is GenAI. So at this first instance, the review has come through. But if you see the metadata, so now the metadata, so initially when the review instance a review topic got generated, the metadata was null. So as I said, it goes on updating as and when the information is provided. So now it has updated the metadata with the structure. I mentioned the title, the scene, short summary, confidence, potential threat level, etc. So now if you go back to this UI, and you can see it's still not updated here. It takes a bit of a time to get updated, but ideally it will show here. So let's give it another chance. This hasn't showed up yet. And so you can see this person gesturing in no room. So that's part of the description. So it is, there you go. So now the description. So it takes a bit of time to update the UI. There's a bit of a lag, but if you see the frigate topic got updated earlier, so that's faster than this. And you can see here the scene, person in black shirt is seen inside a room with a window covered by light, curtain, microphone. So that's quite a bit. And the same thing, if you click on this, you'll see the details here. Yeah, that's the one. So that's how your Gen AI description and your review summaries work. Hope that this kind of gives you an idea of what this feature offers and how you can probably utilize this. So next topic, let's look at the face recognition. And I'm pretty excited to show that because I feel that the face recognition implementation in Frigate is spot on. I have actually, if you have seen my earlier videos, you would have seen I was using a double take and a compare face external setup for doing my face recognition, which was pretty good and pretty fast as well. But now I have replaced it entirely with the face recognition in Frigate because not only is it simpler, seamless, and easier, but even the detection is pretty good. And the model that I'm using, as I mentioned in my production setup, is a ULO V9 model. But you'll see in this example, even with this CPU or iGPU based model of OpenVINO, it is pretty quick and instant. So let's have a look at that feature now. So for face recognition feature, the first thing you need to do is you need to go to settings and here enrichments. And in here, you have to enable the face recognition. You see it's disabled at the moment. So you just need to enable this. And I will leave the model selection to small because that works pretty well. But you might want to. So face recognition is a bit of a tricky thing in the sense that accuracy might be very important or may not be that important for you. For example, if you are only trying to distinguish between one or two known person of the household versus unknown faces, small model might be pretty good for you. But if you're trying to identify many faces, like even the faces of your friends, and some of the features of your friends' faces are quite similar to your own features, you might want to go for a better model. Cost of obviously the speed or performance, because the accuracy might be more important in your case. So it depends on your use case again, whether you want to tweak these model parameters or not. But for my use case, it's mostly I only try to detect mine or my wife's face, and everything else I've slot into unknown. So in that for that use case, small works pretty fine, and it is pretty quick as well. So once you do any of these enrichment feature, you need to hit save, and as it says, you need to hit restart. So let me restart the Frigate instance, and then I'm going to come back to this. Right, so I have now restarted my Frigate instance. The next thing you need to do is you need to upload a face for it to recognize. Now, faces are generally in a form of collection. So when you hit this add face option here, you should be, by the way, this option of this face recognition face library, this will appear only when you have the face recognition turned on. So once you come here, you add face. Now this is always a collection. So even if you're adding one image, it will become part of a collection. And generally you would name your collection by the name of the person whose faces you're uploading. Now there is a guidance if you go to the Frigate documentation, let's have a quick look on face recognition. Let's move this away somewhere here. And if you go to this guidance, so here it says a few things like talks about the small, large model, the config. And there are these finer level parameters which you can control to improve your face detection. And I would say this is your first port of call in case if you feel that the face detection is not happening often enough, or there are lots of misses. There are a few things you can do. The first and foremost thing you can do is giving it more images. And that's what it says here. If you see, 5 to 10 minimum images, 20 to 30, or even 50 to 100 best case scenario. Again, depending on how much accuracy you're after, and if you're trying to distinguish between faces of multiple people visiting a property, for example, that's when you might ideally go for 50 to 100. In my use case, like 5 to 10, I think works pretty good. But one thing you should aim for is different angles from the camera. So even if you're giving just 5 to 10, try a little bit from higher angle, lower angle, from side and from the front. That helps a lot with the detection. The other things you can tweak are all these parameters here. So the recognition threshold. So by default is 90%, 0.9. You might want to bring it down just because you feel like the area is not well lit and sometimes the recognition is not happening. So these are parameters you can tweak to get better recognition out of your setup. And this detection threshold is 0.7. You might want to a minimum score of 0.8 or 0.9, for example. So these are a few of the parameters here that I want to mention. Now going back to this setting in the face library, let me add a face here. So I'll name this as B, that's the initials of my name. And then Next, I'm going to upload an image. It has to be a specific format. I think it's either a JPG or a PNG as far as I remember. And then I have this image here, which I've literally taken using this same camera. So I'm going to open this and hit next. And there you go. The face got added in your library. So way to find whether the face is successfully added, you can click here and you can see this PB1. So that means one image has been added. You could delete and start fresh in case if you don't want the old images, or you can rename it here. So these are the only two steps. If you can go back and verify in the config setting that your face recognition has turned on. So you can see face recognition enabled true, model size small. This will come up automatically when you switch it on from the setting. But having said that, you might want to turn it off. So this is again a global level setting, but you might want to turn it off for a specific camera. In that case, like I have done here, I think haven't done, but for this test camera, but this is not required in my case, but you could say for this one camera, face recognition enabled false. And then for the other camera, you could just leave it like that because by default it is true. So that's something which you might want to do in the config. Now, once this config is set up, we can go ahead and actually see this action. The next thing is the automation in Home Assistant. So I have created a simple automation similar to the one before, which is like I have done a text to speech setup, but for this demo, what I've also added is a browser mode pop-up similar to the one which I did for the GenAI. So again, here the message, MQTT message received is the tracked object update. That is the same one, but this time the type is going to be face. And I have also added an additional one that the score is greater than 0.8. So that's something which I generally add because you don't want lots of false detections happening, right? And then in the pop-up, I have simply said that, so hello, the person.name. So this I'm taking the name from the payload JSON, and then I've added a second picture or a snapshot of that person pointing to my Frigate API events URL. So I think that should be pretty good. Obviously, you can do more fancy stuff with this, and you can even do a notification with this. And this is a specific use case where you might want to do a notification. In my production server, I have got a notification when it detects my face, for example. I also have an action option there to unlock the main door. So you can do more fancy stuff. And you can see that example automation in my previous video. If you haven't seen it, you can look up that video. I will leave a link somewhere on the screen for that video. And then additionally, I have done a TTS on the saying unknown because I think, right. So I've done a text to speech. You could do it on a speaker or anywhere else. Again, for this demo, I'm just using browser mode. So it is literally this MacBook that is going to say out the name. And then I've added a delay because typically you wouldn't want, because the same person might be in the area for some time. So you wouldn't want repeated messages of detecting the same person multiple times. So that's disabled at the moment. Let's enable that. Right. So that's a very simple automation setup. Now let's see this in action. For that, I'm going to keep the Home Assistant screen in the background. And here again, as usual, I'm going to switch off the privacy mode, and that should trigger both the GenAI this time because we have the GenAI setup as well. So the GenAI description will be triggered, but also face recognition should get triggered. And hopefully it should recognize me. So let's give it a try. Let me switch off the privacy mode now. I've done that. Right. So it is, let me look at the camera.
Hello, PB.
There you go. So you can see that was pretty fast. You can see the box here and with the snapshot. So as you can see, the detection was instant, right? And this is low performance setting that I have here. So I'm very impressed with this face recognition. And you can see this time it has a tick against it. So that shows that it has not only recognized a person, it has detected a person, but it has recognized that person. Let me switch off this recording. And if you go to this face library, there you go, you get the score as well. So you can see it took so many snapshots. And out of that, it scored, two of them were scored a bit lower, but the rest of them have got a score of above 90%. So overwhelmingly a match. Now, one thing is that it will pass each of these as in the topic. So if I look at the MQTT topic in the tracked object update, so you can see it has switched to now description because that's the one which happened later. But if you go to history here, come on, let's open this, right? So you will see that there. So initially this same topic was passed the name PB and the type as face. So that is where my automation got triggered. And later on this description came up because the GenAI description also got triggered. And that's why the filter on type is very important for different kinds of automation. So that's your face recognition happening in real time. And as you can see, it's a pretty impressive one. I would definitely recommend using this setup versus any of the external setup that you might have, Frigate specifically. Right, now let's look at the third feature that we're going to talk about today, which is the license plate recognition. Again, very impressive implementation. And Frigate natively ships with a model which by default allows you to start doing license plate recognition without having the need to download or train any model. However, if you want to, or if you already have a trained model, you can plug in your own model behind the scene and you can use that for license plate recognition as well. That is a bit of an advanced topic. I might cover it in, if there is a demand, I might cover it in a separate video altogether. But let's look at what the documentation says. So if you go through the documentation, the few things that are important is that the license plate number appears as a sub label instead of a label. So the label will say car and the sub label is going to say the exact license plate number. And if it is an unknown one, then you will find it in recognized license plate field instead of a sub label. So there you have the option to configure a known license. So if you, for example, your own car, you might configure it as a known license plate. And if it recognizes it, it will show as a sub label instead of a recognized license plate. That's one thing to remember. The second thing is the model requirements. As you can see, it mentions here for this LPR to work, the one of the things to track, it should be either a car or motorcycle. So whatever model you use, you need to have car or motorcycle as a tracked object or the ability to track them as part of that model. For example, if you're using YOLO V9, which is the one I'm using in production, it supports up to 17 labels and two of them are car and motorcycle. So you can use that. One thing to note is for using YOLO V9 license plate recognition model, it requires a bit of a steps. You need to get hold of the trained version of the model, which I'm not sure if it is available somewhere, or you need to take the model and you take the publicly available data set and then you need to train the model so that it can detect the license plate better. So that's a very advanced concept, obviously. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. But again, as I mentioned, if I see that there's a demand for it, I might cover that as well in one of the later videos. Now, looking at the detailed options that you can set up. So there is this usual, the threshold, the minimum area. Device is something which you won't need unless you have a dedicated GPU card. So we can skip that. Model size, again, I'm going to use small in this demo video. And again, it works pretty well. But license plate is a bit of a difficult thing to recognize. There's a lot of combination involved. So the more parameters you configure, the better. For example, if you configure minimum plate length based on the country where you are, and also the format based on the country where you are, all this will definitely help you to recognize the license plate better. And then you can obviously add the known plates, and the match distance is like whether, as it mentions here, if your ABCDE will match to ABCBE or ABCD. So there's a difference of one letter. So that it tells how much difference is acceptable as a recognition. The other thing here is an enhancement one. I haven't found any use for this. And it says here also in the document that if you increase the value, there's a chance the detection might get worse. So I'm not sure if there is a use case for this, at least not in my scenario. But again, this is a parameter which you can tweak if you're getting a lot of false detection or missed detections in this case. And then you have the replace rules, very advanced. I don't think you'll have a case for this, but you can basically, once it is detected, it can replace based on a pattern. So for example, there's a sequence which is very common in your area, so you might always want to replace it with that. Again, very like it's an option here. I don't know who uses it and what is the use case for this, but it's available, so you can use that. And then for debugging, you can save the plates for debugging. You can also, on the snapshot, you can enable the box. So that will help you to identify that what is the detection area and whether there's a license plate visible. So in this case, I would prefer enabling the snapshot, the bounding box, so that when the car image is shown as detection, you can at least see that whether that image shows the license plate clearly or not. Right, and that's an example of the config. What I have done is I have loaded a pre-recorded video to demonstrate this. So if I go to my config, so if I go to the config that I have here, so here what I've done is I have just this test camera, I've loaded a pre-recorded video and I'm just doing the loop through that one. And then I'm tracking the object car and simply LPR enable true. That's the only setting I have. And for snapshots, as I've said, I have the bounding box true and the crop true. Crop means basically it tries to crop into the exact image that it has detected as a car here. And again, MQTT enable true. If you want to do any kind of notification or home assistant notification based on the detection, you could, or automation, you could do that. But I'm not showing it in this video to keep this video a bit short. But you can follow the same pattern like I showed you before. Basically uses the same topic, tracked object update, and the type comes as LPR. So you can just fire automation based on that. And we'll see, look at the topic definitely once the detection happens so that we can figure it out. So let's do this thing. I'm going to, now this camera which is disabled, if I enable it, it'll immediately start triggering because there's a lot of moving cars with few of them like license plates visible in this video. And that should trigger your automation. Before we do that, remember that in the settings, you need to go to enrichments and you need to switch on license plate recognition, save and restart. I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it for this video, but that's an important step. And finally, in the config, if you want to switch it off, I have wanted to switch it off for this other camera. So at the bottom, you can, somewhere in the camera configuration, you can put LPR enabled false. So that means the global level it is turned on again for a specific camera. One more thing that is mentioned here, that if you see that sometimes you might have a camera which is pointing towards the license plate instead of the car. But since car detection is important in the normal setup, it won't trigger because there's nothing like a license plate detection as a tracked object. It is car which is the tracked object. For that scenario, what Frigate has done is they have given you an option of defining it as a type of LPR. So that's a very specific type of camera, which is generally find it in security of buildings, etc. They're just reading license plate instead of the car itself. So there is a setup you can do for that. If you have that kind of specialized setup, you'll need to use the type of LPR. That is the one which will trigger the detection once a license plate is recognized or detected. So that's something that you might find useful. Right, to demonstrate the LPR functionality, I'm going to enable this camera which has a video running of a few cars in action. So let's do that. So I'm enabling the camera, right. So there it goes. You can immediately, you can see that it has detected cars, and I'll let it run for maybe 1 or 2 seconds. So you can see cars moving in and out, and let's now disable the camera. Now, where you will find the license plate recognition, if you go to the Explore, you can see the tracked object as car. And then you can see that it has captured lots and lots of pictures, snapshots. And you will see, right, that there will be some false detections like this one, TA18. But this one, if you look at this one, this is the correct license plate. So this car is indeed 18LD96. And then again, this is incorrect detection. And then again, here it is detected correctly. And this 70A18 actually is one of the cars. I think this car is 70A18, but somehow the snapshot is incorrect in this one. So it's a bit of hit and miss. Obviously, I'm using a very low powered, small model as well as a low powered GPU based. So it is not going to be perfect, but if you see there's good enough hit. So you see this plate number 18LD96, and you see this recognized license plate, it is shown as 18LD96. So because this is not a known plate, so that's why it has been shown under recognized license. So you can see this works pretty well. So let's quickly look at the topic, Frigate topic, which got generated, MQTT topic, which got generated based on the license plate recognition. So you can see the type as LPR, and this was the last recognition that it did, TA18. But if you go back in history, so this was the message that came through. So type LPR, name as null, plate number, the score, which is above 90%, which is the event ID. And you can use the event ID to, for example, to fetch the snapshot or the clip if you want, and the timestamp. The name, one option I didn't figure is a known plate, but it's pretty simple. It's an option. We can use this plate as a known plate. Let's try this. I'm going to go here to my tip and in my configuration editor. So where we have the LPR enabled true at the top level, option known plates, then under this, let's say PBs, sign codes, and then 18-LD-96. And let's save and restart. So now I have the known plate configuration enabled. So let me enable this camera and let the detection happen on the number plates. In fact, we can monitor the topic here as well and see how it goes. So did you see? So you see there, let me quickly disable this, otherwise it's hard to track. So there, this one. So there you can see the name PV's car and the plate 18LD96. So when it recognized the plate, it matched it to the name provided. and that's what is passed in the MQTT topic. So that's something which you can use for the automation. So now if I come to this explore tab and if I'm looking at this detection, so for example, here it says PV's car. So here you can see that the sub-label has come up as a PV's car and also the recognized license plate and snapshot. So there you go. So that's how you can add a known plate to the setup as well. So I just wanted to quickly show that part of the feature as well, which I think is pretty handy. In the beginning, I mentioned about semantic search. So this is where your semantic search comes in really handy. So when you switch on the semantic search, this search box appears at the top. And if you're familiar with the concept of embeddings or RAG in AI, so this is something similar. It allows you to search for objects within the images or for what the image description includes. So you can search for that. So if you click here, for example, it has filtered on, so this is a filter, but a semantic search allows you to use these predefined categories or labels within Frigate to do a search. For example, I'm just looking for images of cars with a recognized license plate. So I'll just select recognized license plate and immediately you see it shows you the 3 values that it has detected. And let's say I'm only interested in the positive detection of 18LD96. If I hit this, there you go. So the 2 images with this detection is shown up. So that's the power of semantic search. So you can search based on descriptions of the images rather than just data points. So that's how you can use the semantic search. Obviously, when you have lots and lots of snapshots and videos and reviews, recordings, that's when your semantic search is really going to be more powerful. One quick point around the semantic search is that there's an option for model selection, small and large. I've seen the small works pretty fine. Large is for when you have a dedicated GPU for processing. That is when you would probably select large. But in my use, real world test, I think the small models have been working pretty well. I don't see any need to change to the large model at all. So that's something to talk about. That's something you can change depending on the kind of setup. This reindex now is an option which lets you, so let's say you already have lots of detections, but you never turned on the semantic search till date or the GenAI component. So these snapshots or existing review items will not have any embeddings in them, which won't allow you to do any kind of semantic search or any kind of GenAI detection. You could actually go and open an item and manually ask GenAI description to be added to it. I don't see the real world use case for that, but that's an option. So, but be careful if you hit your index now, it's going to go through each and every existing recording and clip and it's going to try and add embedding to it. And that kind of maxes out the CPU. And again, it depends on how powerful CPU you're using, but it definitely kills the server for a while. And it takes a long time for everything to work. So ideally, I wouldn't suggest you to do that, or maybe just clear the history before you do that if there are a few you want to reindex or you want to be part of the semantic search. So that's all the topic that I wanted to cover in this video. Hope you find this useful. There are a few other advanced configuration I haven't talked about. There are many if you take other areas of Frigate as well. But in similar lines, I've got something called the bird classification, something which I don't use, but maybe if any of you guys are using it, maybe you can comment down in the video. The other one I'm interested in is this custom classification, which allows you to do state and object classification. Now, this is a bit of an advanced topic as well as a niche topic, so I didn't want to cover it in this video. I'm also currently working with that feature. It's like in a trial phase. So once, if I find a very good use case for it and if I see that it is working pretty well, I'm probably going to make another video in future on these features. And do let me know in the comment section if you need to cover any of those which I haven't talked about. There are other advanced features as well. Frigate is a very powerful piece of software, and kudos to the devs for making it such a feature-rich software. And I keep finding things that I didn't know existed. For example, there's this audio transcription. So if you have these recordings, you can transcribe it at runtime to a language, and that is again passed as a Frigate topic. You can bring it into your Home Assistant dashboard, for example, and can show it on the dashboard. So there's a lot in Frigate. If you want me to cover more of these options, do let me know in the comment section. I would be more than happy to further videos on these topics. So that will be all for this video. Hope you found this useful. Do not forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more such videos in the future. I will see you in the next one. Till then, stay safe and stay connected.